everyone, and welcome to another Into the Void Real review. This time we are reviewing 20 Years Later, The Bone Temple, directed by Nia DaCosta and written by Alex Garland. It stars Ralph Fiennes as Dr. Kelson and Alfie Williams as Spike, who come back to reprise their roles that they started in 2025's 28 Years Later, which was on my top 10 movies list of 2025. Spoilers are coming, so beware if you want to know nothing and want to go in blind when you watch this movie. In fact, if you haven't watched the first film 28 Years Later, then you might want to wait to watch that movie before you hop into this review. We good? Okay, let's begin. If you remember at the end of last year's movie, Spike ended up running into a group of blonde-haired misfits that reminded me a lot of a rejected gang from the movie The Warriors. Well, those blonde-haired mofos want to play. Come out to play. And they aren't playing nicely. After an initiation that turns bloody in which Spike must fight one of the gang to earn his place among the Jimmies, that's what they call themselves, things move forward in which they invade the house of a family of country folk who have just escaped an angry mob of infected. Little do they know, they were better off fending off the zombified than getting involved with these Satan-following miscreants because they find themselves being filleted by them soon after their presence is rejected. They're hung like cattle and skinned alive. Why? I guess it's kind of a running theme in these types of movies that the real monsters are the humans who have found themselves in a world of martial law. Let me tell you this. This is a squeamish movie with lots of blood and gore, and if you're not into that, you may be put off by it. So far, this year is off to a gory start with Primate and this film being released back to back. What I really would like to see is the rabies-infected chimpanzee from Primate and the Jimmies in a room or barn together for that matter and see who comes out on top. I want to see that movie. Meanwhile, we have Dr. Kelson trying to make friends with the zombie-infected Samson, who we saw in the first 28 Years Later movie. That's another thing. If you don't like seeing male parts so flippantly displayed, then you may want to steer clear of this movie. Samson is one-upping the previous movie by showing twice as much Pied Piper this time around. That would be a shame, though, if you let that detour you from watching an all-around excellent movie. Dr. Kelson, played by an always great Ralph Fiennes.
Old Nick. You mean Satan?
Is great. I mean, seriously, has there been a role he hasn't been good at? This guy's enigmatic and knows how to convey emotion and feeling in just a look or a gesture that is leagues ahead of a lot of actors in Hollywood. The most interesting part of 20 Years Later, The Bone Temple, is the interplay between Dr. Kelson and Samson. When Dr. Kelson first runs into the zombified behemoth of a man, you feel fear, obviously, but then after when he treats him with a concoction of medicine that quells the beast, you begin to feel empathy to the man who, of course, was a normal human being that unexpectedly ran into the apocalyptic demise of the virus that corrupted mankind so many years ago. It's touching to see Samson, played by Lewis Perry, who is criminally underappreciated for his varied performance as a whacked out of his mind psycho infected that quickly becomes calmed by the cocktail of morphine and some other drugs that Kelson administers to him over the course of their time together. The bromance is real between the two, and the anxiety is real as well. When you wonder if Kelson's being a little too trusting of his invention that could be the cure to the world-ending virus. The music interludes are very effective in these moments in which the two spend time just hanging out, literally, by the river, getting high on drugs and talking about what life was like before things turned sideways. The movie wisely doesn't try to take on too many plot threads or through lines, only really focusing on the good doctor and Samson, and then switching to Spike's experience with the Fingers or the Jimmies, which is headed up by the true villain of the story, Sir Jimmy Crystal, played by Jack O'Connell. He is the alpha and omega of the Jimmies, who claims to have the ear to Satan himself. Little does he know that some of his group, namely Jimmy Inc., played by Aaron Kellyman, are only too keen to call bullshit on the religion he spews to the group. She ultimately becomes the guiding light that Spike needs to weather the storm of brutality and violence that the Fingers spread to anyone they come into contact with. The two develop a dysfunctional friendship that becomes less dysfunctional as the movie moves to its inevitable conclusion that sees the demise of the best thing going for the movie, Dr. Kelson. It really is a shame that if we see a third movie, which as of now is still slated to be released sometime in the future, we won't be seeing him barring some miraculous magic trick that we are not privy to as of yet. But before that demise, we witness a show that the good doctor, or shall we call him the voodoo doctor, puts on when he is asked to pretend to be the devil himself, aka Satan 666, the number of the beast notwithstanding. This is probably the best part of the movie, in which the Jimmies become mesmerized by the performance of the voodoo doctor, in which drugs and rock and roll are all part of the show. Of course, this is all part of the plan concocted by Sir Jimmy Crystal, who wants to use the ruse to strengthen his control of the fingers and hopefully corrupt several more souls into joining his clan, thereby bringing terror to the land. The finale had its funny moments that had everyone laughing in my theater. One particular moment that had me cracking up was when Dr. Kelson, aka Mr. Satan himself, demanded that the head Jimmy sacrifice himself just like Jesus sacrificed himself on the cross. Of course, that idea doesn't fly with him, but nonetheless, when Jimmy Inc. turns on him and stabs him, he quickly finds himself nailed to a cross upside down. It's a satisfying moment that was well earned after the carnage that was spread from his corrupt beliefs. Dr. Kelson unfortunately gets a shift to the gut from the head Jimmy, sealing his fate. Samson ends up coming back to carry the good doctor to lay him to rest, or maybe he carries him to his salvation. Here's hoping, but it's a some hope, I know. There is a moment I skipped in which Samson becomes relatively cured from the virus and then happens upon the derelict train from the first movie. There we get a flashback of a time when Samson was a normal kid who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. When he comes to, he quickly dispatches some zombies who are about to eat him, displaying his still intact superhero strength minus the rage inherent in the virus. Could he be a new iteration of the zombie? It's an effective plot device that gets me thinking about the zombies as more than just zombies, but actual people that just had a bad thing happen to them. That's where 28 years later, The Bone Temple succeeds in that it asks questions beyond what a normal zombie movie would ask. If it even asks questions, that is. Most of these movies are a tired exercise in zombies wreaking havoc, but never really treading deep philosophically. That's what made me like this movie more than the first, in fact. It's because it made me think and get invested in the relationship between the doctor and Samson. Sure, the Jimmies were interesting to a point, but sometimes they felt a little out of place. However, the world building is real and has me invested in what a possible third movie could entail. And here's hoping that the movie makes some money, because I do want to see a third movie made. Cillian Murphy's character is represented at the end with his daughter, who are holed up in a cabin out in the countryside. They do see Spike and the female Jimmy running away from zombies at the end and ultimately decide to help them. That's where it ends, seeming to come full circle from where the first movie started. I really enjoyed 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. It has a good heart beneath its gory exterior, represented with some great cinematography and equally great music that rounds out an all-around excellent package. I am giving 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple an 8 out of 10. What were your thoughts on the movie? Better or worse than 28 Years Later? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and I will see you the next time we venture into the void.